begin what's trending by taking reactions to the 30 hybrid-powered compressed natural gas buses donated by the depot and Petroleum Products Marketers Association of Nigeria to ease the cost of transportation on Nigerians. Well, on Monday, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, during the inauguration ceremony at the State House in Abuja, emphasized the urgent need for Nigeria to utilize its vast natural gas resources in the transportation sector.
If we can enhance our energy competitiveness and bring about transformative changes like this, we would definitely be able to achieve the prosperity that we are working hard to accomplish for our people. These buses, along with the CNG and being convertible, is very encouraging and promising to enhance our transportation system.
All right, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has kept his promise. I mean, it was even in the nationwide broadcast on August 1st, announcing that, this was going to happen, and it has happened. But there are 30 buses. Some Nigerians have said, I mean, how would it be shared? Would it be shared one to each state? What about the remaining 6 states? But there are more reactions that have trailed the story. Let me take this one from Fizz, who wrote, August 2023, Nigerians were promised the same to ease transportation and reduce burden of subsidy removal a year after. Our number one and number two men in a nation of over 200 million people gather to celebrate 30 CNG buses. It's even termed groundbreaking plan. Where are we headed in Nigeria? I mean, I'm sure you know the mood of the nation. People will react to this type of story because we've always talked about palliatives not being what we need. Well, in the meantime, the Nnpc also said that it donated about 10 buses. This is their tweet here. They wrote, in its continued efforts to support the federal government's drive towards deepening compressed natural gas utilization nationwide, the Nnpc Limited, through its corporate social responsibility arm, Nnpc Foundation, has donated 10 CNG buses to cushion the effects of transportation on Nigerians. Let me take some reactions to this story. This person is James. He wrote, we joke too much in this country. What Nigerians want is simple. Supply crude oil to Aliko Dangote refinery for us to have enough energy to run the country, boost economy, and reduce inflation. After then, you can dash your 10 CNG buses to foundations. This is not too much. Nah. Another Twitter user wrote, get out of this usual business of donation and stick to your regulatory role as a national institution. Focus on bringing petroleum retailing to underserved communities in the riverine area in collaboration with the NDDC to forestall the desire to steal and trade in crude oil. Another person wrote, where does Nnpc, a government entity, get free money from to donate 10 buses? Only in Nigeria do you see CBN donating money to a certain cause. Not that it is not a good venture, but how does a government agency owned by all Nigerians donate to whoever they want? I mean, Nnpc said it, that, it's their social corporate responsibility, which a lot of, limited liability companies, do. But you can't blame Nigerians for asking this type of questions. But Rufai, we have, what? 30 plus 10, that's 40 CNG buses at this point. We have always advocated for CNG anyways, but, I'd like your response to some of those Twitter users.
30?
Yes.
Plus 10, plus I think about close to another 1,000 kits, plus another one that Jet produced recently. I think there's a couple of 100 buses. Yeah. Some will say it's admirable. But the question is, when the president announced the CNG rollout a year ago, would you honestly, in your heart of hearts, say that we have met those thresholds? Can you see the pervasive effect of CNG buses in our society? The answer is no. It trickles. For a country, if my stat serves me right, that has close to over 10 million cars on the road and all of that, if my memory serves me right, or close to that level, or close to that number, I don't know, maybe between 5 to 10 million threshold of cars on the road, and you are having about 5,000, but it's not going to do so much. So what they can also do is, number one, ensure the full value chain. They started some level of conversion. I hear Naseni say they want to convert, give a 50% slash on conversion. Why not and if not? The goal during President Buhari's time was 5 million cars to be converted. The president lastly announced 1 million cars. We have not gotten there at all. Then most importantly, how do we ensure constant supply of CNG? There are not enough stations. Yeah, the long trickle of stations here and there, but that's not the pervasive nature of things. So how can we in the coming years double up upon that? You talked about training this morning. Very essential. In fact, my mechanic has gone to, shout out to City Mechanics, has gone to, I just had to plug in him, good guy, Jide. I mean,
you've told me to go meet
mechanic gives you heartbreak.
Yes.
So Jide of City Mechanics is a good mechanic in Ikeja.
He has to pay me for this.
I'm sorry, but I had to plug it in. The placement, but the truth has to be said.
Yeah.
All mechanics also should be able to get this training. How can we pervasively? We can also use the training on how to do fix CNG car as a national empowerment for people that have no skills. Train them up on these skills and make this bus largely available. We have not gotten to the threshold yet. But another thing is, how do we even bring those in the ecosystem into this 250 billion presidential CNG initiative? It's not going to scratch them. I've talked to many people in this ecosystem. We're saying we're not even scratching the surface at all. So how can we ensure that is even more? But yes, kudos, but there's still a lot that has to be, still a far cry. Somebody will be thinking 1 year after, we should at least be hitting 1 million in terms of exposure for this thing.
I also like the conversation of moving away from, fuel as well. I mean, with the whole CNG, I mean, we're a gas producing nation. Why not embrace it as well? But the conversation with the Nnpc donating 10 CNG buses also, it got a lot of Nigerians angry. I don't know why. I mean, it's also the conversation about, Nnpc underperforming. We talked about this earlier, where protesters were out protesting against the Nnpc bus. Meanwhile, President Bola Tinubu has also been advised by the Conference of Nigeria Political Parties to sack the chief executive of the Nigerian petroleum company, Mele Kyari, over allegations of subsidy scams, importation of substandard petroleum products, and the mismanagement of the Port Harcourt refinery. Well, in a statement signed by the Deputy National Publicity Secretary, the CNPP said it is time to hold Nnpc Limited accountable by immediately suspending Mele Kyari and independently probing the subsidy scam and other allegations in the Nigeria's upstream and downstream oil sectors to save the economy and minimize hunger. I mean, this is a coalition of political parties, so it's not like it's one particular party calling for the, removal or suspension, at least that's what they are calling. So that, the investigation can continue. And I think, they are speaking the minds of a lot of Nigerians that are calling for his suspension at this time. Ayo.
Well, they're well within their rights. Well, the first question I'd like to ask is, how many people have been suspended or have lost their jobs in Nigeria for lack of performance? I mean in government. If it's a private sector organization, immediately you go through the process. There's a procedure for KPI, measuring how well you performed. And if you're consistently underperforming or not performing, then you will have to face disciplinary action. But unfortunately in Nigeria, sometimes the reward for bad work is more work. I'm not saying that's the case with regards to Mele Kyari, but we see instances like that where there ought to be a suspension or heads rolling or something happening, or even out of dignity a stepping down because you haven't been able to effectively discharge your duties. But what we consistently see is impunity, therefore leading to more inefficiencies because people are not taking account or people are not held to account. With Mr. Mele Kyari in this instance, now centering on him, the truth is that the three things they've listed are not untrue. The first, with regards to subsidy scam, even the fact that we didn't even think along those lines when we're talking about subsidy scam, that there's a leader in that regard of the Nnpc, or why has it not been questioned, is a big issue. The second, around substandard products. We remember when cars were knocking in Nigeria at some point. Who took who was held accountable for it? Nobody. The third, around the Dangote refinery, or the fact that they've not been able to sort things that provide adequate crude, fuel scarcity prevalent in Nigeria, no questions being asked. There's currently an investigation being carried out by the Senate. Let's maybe wait for that investigation and see what the outcome would be. But the only challenge is that it's a reign of impunity, and that's why we have agencies and departments underperforming without any recourse at all to any kind of punitive measure for it. Should Mr. Mele Kyari be suspended? Should he be sacked? It would be the outcome of an investigation, so he gets fair hearing. If he's able to demonstrate that he's able to discharge his duties, then why not let him continue? But if he's not able to defend it, then there ought to be some form of punitive measure.
I mean, that you just hit the nail on the head, but you know, my beautiful favorite Niger wife, I mean, you have been in our country for, you know, quite some time now. I mean, you were here when the subsidy was announced, removal of 12 subsidy. It went from what, 167 naira for the pump price to 700 naira. I mean, you know, you cannot blame Nigerians for feeling aggravated, because this would have been, you know, solved a long time ago if we had our refineries working, if we had our, you know, situation sorted. Why should we continue to go through these issues in Nigeria, our favorite Niger wife?
and you know what, just for historical context, I was also here during Occupy Nigeria.
You were,
I was not on a visit, but I was here while all of that was happening. So, you know, when you listen to former President Obasanjo and his experience with Nnpc, when you listen to what Tony Elumelu shared about his experience, and then you look at what's happening now, there's obviously a common denominator there. There's a systemic challenge. It's not about an individual. So yes, as much as we have to hold people to account, this is bigger than Mele Kyari, because if he is to be removed, another figure is going to come in just to oversee the same institutional failure that has continued for decades and decades. It's now time for us to go into the organization. We thought by it becoming, by being privatized, that, you know, there would be some form of a cleanup and a mop-up. But we're struggling to see that. We want to open up the financials. Let's see the books. What's happening there? Let's find out, you know, there needs to be some sort of forensic audit, a genuine independent one, bring in external people from all corners of the world to unravel and expose what the real challenge is, because it doesn't make sense.
So many points Olusegun Obasanjo had made, and you know, one of the things I took out was the fact that he said the refineries cannot function. They will not function. I mean, so what are we talking about here? We're hearing an announcement end of August, or this August, Nnpc says they're going to, you know, revamp the, it's going to start working.
From December.
And the main question, again, I think you guys talked about it during the business segment, is subsidy ever going to be removed? Because, you know, we are still paying subsidy. Yeah. Definitely still
No, it's not going to be removed anytime soon.
I mean, it's not going to be removed anytime soon. It's unfair, really, it's unfair. Something's got to give. I mean, the suspension of Mele Kyari can be one of them. I mean, that's what they've called for. Well, meanwhile, the presidency has reacted to the controversy over the